Thank you very much, Johannes, and thank you, the dude, I don't even catch your real name. I'm going to talk about deck building and Vita theory from a Swedish perspective. But first off, who am I? I'm Isak. Some of you have met me, played games, maybe seen me on the internet during my show. I make with my brother and a friend, my Vitas TV show. And that is one of the many things I do with Vitas. I'm 25 years old, I'm a teacher student, I'm going to be a high school teacher in half a year, so this is my profession, doing lectures. So maybe that's why I came up with this idea. I'm also the NC, Swedish NC, so I organize the national championships, the ECQ, etc. in Sweden, and try to make people buy cards, play cards, and optimize their decks to the best of their ability. So, this is who I am. Why am I giving this lecture, and why should I be giving it? So, first off, why am I giving a lecture? It's derived from a thought that this community needs to communicate better. To communicate like ideas, experiences, and ways of analyzing and thinking about this game. Because this game, in my honest opinion, is the most difficult game in the world. It's very, very difficult. It's easier to get a degree out of a university than completing to win a major tournament in this game. So that's why I'm doing this. And someone told me that I shouldn't write from a Swedish perspective. That makes me sound arrogant. And I have this arrogant streak. I should not try to put that under the chair.
No problem!
But I'm putting Swedish out of trying to be humble, because this is just me and my friend's perspective of the game. This might not be the right way, and it might not be the best way, but this is our way. And this is how we have come to the point we are today. And maybe a year from now or 2 years from now, I will look back at this and like, what? I should not curse, but what we were talking about, this doesn't make any sense. Another thing, and this is mostly to the people who have English as their native tongue, but since English is not my native tongue, this is not my first language, I just want to excuse myself. Because sometimes I'm going to say something that doesn't make any sense. And maybe even I will offend someone, or sound arrogant, or sound stupid, or something like that. And I'll illustrate this by a small story. This summer I went to Ropecon. That's not Ropecon, that's Ropecon in Finland. That's one of the biggest tournaments, the biggest tournaments of the year in the world. And if you haven't gone there, do go. It's terrific calm, it's a terrific Vitas event. Anyways, so we were sleeping at a Finnish friend's my place, and it's in here in the room, and we were going to take our air mattresses, you know, the ones that you have to fill with air. And I walked around and I had one of those that have a cord that you put in the wall, so that by electricity gets filled with air. And I looked at this Finnish man, confused, and told him I need to find some electricity. And he said, why? I need to blow my mattress up. And that is because I translated blow up from Swedish into English. And that blow up is not inflate, so that's not the same. Okay, maybe I should tell something about my history of Vitas. I started playing this game in 2002. I played it as a casual game with my friends at my kitchen table until 2008 when I wanted to play this on a tournament. I don't know why, but one of those days, just woke up. I want to play Vitas at a tournament. So I went to a tournament. There was a Swedish ECQ, and I scored 0 points.
Like everyone.
And I I couldn't understand why. I'm good at this game, goddammit. I brought my best deck. And there, I also that's Swedish. I also met Erik Torstensson, and most of you know him like the 32 notations in the tournament winning deck archive guide. He's a very, very nice guy. He performed tremendously well in Paris. Unfortunately, he's not attending this EC, so maybe someone else can win. Anyways, I met him, and then it became the pass that we lived in the same town. So we started playing casually together. And for like 3 months, 4 months, and maybe 40 to 50 consecutive games, I got my ass whooped. Like literally whooped. I stood no chance. And the same for my friends. And Eric and his other friend. They won and won and won and won and won and won. Only time I could win was when we draw the seating and he didn't end up on my table. So let's hope I don't get it. And this made me reconsider my position as a Swedish player. Like, I do really suck at this game. I really do, and Eric is very, very good. And that made me go out to the internet, this fantastic source of information. So I ended up on the La Sombra that both of us and mixed up some good or cool deck and started playing. And from there, I'm here where I am now. And this is what I'm going to talk about. The content of my presentation, that is the play group, the basic concept, masters and master decks, and a case study. A few words of art, girls will find your blind spot. Okay, let me switch page. So, on play groups. Everybody have a play group. And you're not able to play Elites without a play group. And your play group is your support and your downfall. And you work together. Elites is a team effort. And that only comes to show when you go to big tournaments. Because there will be, your play group will have its own meta, and your play group will have your own mindset. And that's why I put in Swedish perspective. I can't speak for every Swede who ever played Elites. I can talk for those who are around me. And this is my play group. Like in the smaller sense, the ones I play regularly with. First of all, I've written an allowing play group. And I've been told that this doesn't make any sense in English. What do I mean by an allowing play group here? I mean that you allow things. It's very common, at least over a few beers, someone says, I fucking hate dominate. It's boring. Or someone says, I don't like parachute shift, it's broken. Or someone says, I don't like when people do X during tournament or do Y during casual games. And I don't think this is very good. And in my play group, we've tried to not make this environment. Like, if it's allowed by the rules, it should also be allowed by the play group. That's the only way to go forward or backwards. Not allowing someone to play a certain deck, archetype, or strategy. Like, if someone builds a deck and puts 25 sensory deprivations and only blood game. That could be like the most terrible matchup and probably the most boring game of the week. But you probably, after that game, you will read on that the guy with Ravens deck probably haven't won, and you've learned that lesson. So, allowing people to do whatever they like that is allowed by the rules. All rules, even the tournament rules, should be allowed. My meta is very competitive. I think this is mostly good, but it can also be very, very bad. Especially can be bad for creativity. And a competitive meta makes people play for VPs in casual games. At least the way I see it. So people end up wanting one VP and then they're fine for getting the ass whoop in the heads up of the 3-player game. And learning to play competitively around the kitchen table over a few beers makes you bring that game mindset to the tournament scene. I actually forgot something. I should mention this. This is not about casual gaming. Or building decks that are built for casual gaming. All these ideas are for building decks that are meant to win. So it is very important to make that distinction. If you want to play like a goofy deck, or a fun deck, or a casual deck, or just I come up with this weird trick, I want to try it out. Please do. Have an allowed play group. But this is about how you make the best out of your play on your playground, etc. So I don't want to shoot the wacky goofy decks down. I do too. Just want to point it out. So very competitive meta. The problem with creativity, and creativity can breed competitiveness if you allow people to be creative. And here I have a small story. Once again, Erik Torstensson is the protagonist. So at 1:30 or whatever, in the middle of the night, Erik brings out a vampire, Giovanni, the guy that gives Santa at which location. And probably a lot of people of you have had at that time already built the deck with him because he's kind of obvious superstar. But when you see him, you start laughing or giggling if you're a girl. And I'm a girl. and you see this guy, and he builds a deck, and he performs well with it. And a few months later, he wins ECQ with it, goes to the finals at the German National Championships, and some other foreign guy, and foreign is everyone not from Sweden, that is some Polish guy maybe, won a tournament with it. So, and at the start we thought this is just a stupid deck. It's like a Giovanni Power Bleed deck, but you have like 30 locations that doesn't help you. In the end, it ends up helping you. So, you have to being too competitive can be a problem because it could be people ending up just in the same spot as they start off with, just playing the same deck over and over. Okay, and the next point is openness to receiving criticism and good at criticizing each other. That is, tell someone when they're wrong, but don't be a douche about it. And once someone tells you you're wrong, try to think about it. Am I wrong or am I not wrong? And try to reach an understanding. It's about getting a better deck, not winning the argument. At least that's how we play, and I also see that as very important. And this goes in with a post-game discussion. And by post-game discussion, I mean you end up talking about the game after you play the game. I do this all the time. More or less all the time, with someone at least. I talk about the game. What happened? What didn't happen? What would have happened if that particular action didn't pass or did not pass? What if scenarios? And try to come up with, was this a pure luck? Was this 50% luck? Was this the seeking? Was it someone else that previously made a decision that was wrong, that then made you end up in a bad position? Keeping that discussion and try to analyze what happened and ask each other, what did you have on your hand when you died? What did I have on my hand at that particular moment in the game where I went for the oust? I thought you had no weight. Did I read that correctly? Like those kind of discussions afterwards, we do in my playgroup. We also have very little secrecy. And this has at times been under debate. And what was the Usenet? We don't keep our decks secrets. We might keep secret which overdeck we play, particularly when it comes to tournament. But the deck list and the content of it, we don't, usually. I think that's a good thing, because 10 guys can probably come up with more ideas than one guy. We're all friends. That makes it easier to talk about things, I think. If you only meet once a week, kiss each other's asses and eat us, and then go home. and you have a more professional relationship with each other. And then of course we have Erik Torstensson. And I think everybody, or at least most playgroups have Erik Torstensson. That's the best guy. There's always one guy or a few guys that seems to be ahead of everybody else. So having one of those and try to make them tell you what they do and then try to beat them. At least for me, that's helpful, having someone that's always a step ahead of you so you know where you're going. I've never been the guy first in row. I've never been Erik, so I don't know how that feels.
Feels bad, man.
This is an issue that's been debated for years. I think the original idea came from Switzerland, the so-called Swiss Academy. Started playing with smaller decks. I've tried not to go into too much depth on this. First off, minimizing chance of drawing big chunks of one type of card. If you play 90 cards, and we say in that 90 card deck you need, say, 9 weights, and you play a 60 card deck you only need 6 weights. In the 60 card version, it's impossible for you to have one hand of only weights. But in a 90 card deck it actually is possible. There's a bigger risk of your cards ending up in chunks. So you minimize that risk. You end up with the cards that you need, not the cards that you want. When you sit, usually I sit at the computer and build my deck, you put cards in your deck that you want, or can have, I don't know which technique you use, and it says 212 cards. And then just, how will I get these to 90 cards? And when you're 90 cards, you're like, I made it. I'm at 90 cards. Great. And then you think to yourself, how should I ever be able to get this to 60 cards? Ever. And then when you need to kill your darlings, as some film producer maybe said, director, you need to kill your darlings and end up what you need. What's the goal of your deck? And what you need to fulfill that? Not what you want to do. Like, this goofy card is kind of fun. Like, Tingle Stripes, for instance. I've seen that in Kaiser's decks a lot. Kaiser's decks, they mostly do bleed. And it's also because someone says, this is the deck with Kaiser. I can play Tingle Strike, therefore I should play Tingle Strike. But it doesn't really help the strategy that much. A motivation should be, what do I need to get my game win, not what do I want to play. Once again, when it comes to competitive play. Another thing is, your starting hand is always 7 cards. So, if you're 90 card deck, you draw the top 7 cards. I don't have the exact percentage of the hand, the exact percentage, but that's 7 cards of 90 instead of 60 cards of 90. So, the hand you draw is, in a 60 cards it's above 10%, in a 90 cards deck it's below 10%. So you actually get to see a bigger part of your deck in your starting hand. And this makes you end up with, most of the game, a better starting hand. The hand you start with is better. It's less likely that you end up with a bad starting hand. And this is like the fourth and final point. If you have a habit of playing 90 or 80 card decks, check when the game's over. And it needs to be a game on time or a tournament. And check how many cards are left in your library. And try to take notes. If you consistently have, say, 15 or more cards left in your library when the game's over, then you don't need those 15 cards. Of course, in those 15 cards, there's probably 1 or 2 silver bullets or unique cards, like the ones you only play 1 or 2 of, that you never see play. So if you play a more slim deck, that is that goes empty exactly when the time's up. Then you have exactly as many cards as you need. And finally, I just want to say, if you're a skeptic of the slim deck type, try it out. That's what I did. The first time I heard of this, I thought it was balubas, bananas, or really weird. But I reasoned like this guy is better than me. It means my case was Eric, so it was kind of obvious. So it's like, okay, he does this. I'll try it out and try it for 4 or 5 games. Let's see how it goes. After 4 or 5 games, I actually saw improvement in my drawing. Like, I draw better cards, and the cards that I draw, I want to keep them. When you end up with the cards that you want and not that you need, you end up with bad hand jams. And say, oh, I really need this or that, and you don't draw it because you have the goofy, like, tingle stripes. Ooh, mathematics. This is not my strong suit, but I can use addition and subtraction and division, is called it in English. When you, So this is, let's see, I have a fact. This is 43 games of Vitas, and it's taken from my hometown play group where my brother plays. I just moved from there, so. And so that's 23 5-play tables and 24 play tables, and this is the average turn for an oust to occur. So the first oust is around turn 6, and the last oust is around 9.5. This is a meta that's very aggressive and not as defensive. So if you have a meta that is more aggressive or more defensive, add 1 or maybe 2 turns. Yes?
Do you have statistics on timeouts? Like, how many of these games have time?
This play group do not take that time, but the games rarely pass 1.5 hours. But I urge you, if you want to try this out, try it out, because this is really, for me at least, it makes you see that Vitas is not a time-consuming game when it comes to number of turns. It's time-consuming when it comes to actual real life time. Like 10 turns is not a lot. The longest game was a 4-play table for 13 turns. And by turn I mean 1 lap around the table. That's 1 turn. So, by this I want to say that this is a game of finite resources. Since you only have, for argument's sake, that you have 12 turns. So you only have, the finite resources are, of course, blood and pool, the 2 obvious ones. The master phase actions. In a game, you have 12 master phase actions. With basics, of course, you can modify that. You have mini phase actions. That's a bit more complicated to make each calculation. You have transfers, and that's 12 times 4 transfers. Not that good math, maybe 60 or something like that? 50? 48. Okay, thank you. These are phase actions, you have 12 of them, and the cards in the library are also infinite resource. And with this in mind, if you only have 12 master phase actions, if you use one of those master phase actions to play hunting ground, for instance, and you play that hunting ground in turn 8, it goes to 2 pool, and over the next 9, 10, 11, and 12, 4 turns, you will have 4 blood. So that's essentially one master phase action that goes 2 pool that ends up giving you 4 blood. It's better to play the cover because it's a tribal. If you equal blood to pool. So Keeping this in mind when you build your deck and your strategy, you have very few turns. And what do I mean by this then? This is of course the GW, the infamous game win. This, ladies and gentlemen, maybe only gentlemen, maybe one lady. This is the goal of the game. This is what you're aiming for. It doesn't matter if you have 3 or 4 or 5 points, doesn't matter what Asher says. It's game win, that's what your goal is. So everything you do during a turn that is not towards this goal is a wasted action. So, hunting for one could be costing you the game win. Hunting for one should very rarely occur. Because there are better things to do. Like, the most aggressive, easy to do action is government conditioning, and that's 6 pool damage. That is very much compared to the 1 blood you gain by hunting. So, when you do hunt, most of the time it's you getting punished. Okay, so how do I get to this legendary game win? 1 house at a time. And why I put these 4 cards here? These 4 cards represent the 4 main strategies of getting a game win. The govern down the line, of course, represents bleeding strategy. The kind representing voting strategy. You have Swaniac representing blocking strategy. And you have Fail representing combat. And why have we done like this?
You should put, I think, Dragon Ball there.
Dragon Ball is probably a better card to symbolize combat, but this is more common, I think. And you can combine these, of course, and create a so-called toolbox, if you have 3 of them. Or if you combine the bleed with combat, you have a bruise and bleed, etc. You follow me, you know these archetypes. See my notes? Okay, so I have to defend this. And this is probably me speaking from my personal experience. I just had a talk with machine battles, and they told me that combat is the best way to play these. And in a one way I agree with them, because this strategy is so different from the other strategies. Because I have very hard to find the words for this. Because it's so difficult to play. That's basically it. It's very hard to get it right. Because you at all times have to be proactive. And the way combat works with the deck building, as most people experience, it's very hard to include bleed without making a bruise bleed. So pure combat, this represents. So combining combat with any one of the other 3 is a very viable option, especially combining combat with block. I've seen time and again it succeeds. Because you deny vampires with combat, and that's the biggest strength of combat. The other ones are kind of obvious. Defend your Swaniac, let's go to 5 counters. Say no block, and win the first day, the last chance qualifier or Panama Majorca. That was the Pascal did if you weren't there.
Hey!
But, yeah, give him a round of applause, goddammit. But pure combat, like the Russian combat, you need to be preemptive with everything, and you more or less need to tauterize everyone, or threaten them not to do anything. But that's the same thing as having a tauterized or diablerized. So you try to deny people vampire and then buy a bleed for 1 or a dragon bound or fail. sweep up. Getting a fast victory point with a combo deck is often associated with luck. There's something in the screen. Yes, you don't have to agree. This is just my pointers. And this is the next. Since you need the game win, 1 hour of the time, and there's very finite resources. This is, I don't know, I haven't seen this as much on the internet, but this is a word, or 2 words, we use in Sweden a lot. Crypt acceleration. I could have put Eternals of Sirius here, or something else, but these 3 are the main cards. That is cards that makes you put your vampires into play faster. And this might seem like stacking bad cards in a deck and making it run less smooth. And that's true. You can only play, if you talk about the basics of the game, play 12 monsters during a game. But having played one of this, you gain 1 turn in the transfer phase. 1 entire turn. That means you get a vampire out 1 turn earlier for each still a value play. The other ones work a bit differently. But take for argument's sake, it's 1 turn per card. And you get that guy out 1 turn earlier, and the next guy another turn earlier. You have defense on the table earlier on. You have more actions earlier on, and you have more actions for the duration of the game. And you have the passive votes that can be used for defense or bargaining. So, playing Crypt Declaration, these are actually free strikes. You don't see, but they are actually free strikes, and are free strikes that allow you to complete twice during your turn. So, playing these cards could make you gain an additional 20% turns compared to other players. Something like that. Depends on when you draw and when you get to play, but essentially. So if you have the ability to play any of these, more or less, play them. Because if you think of it even further, like starting a game with 30 pool in your pool is ridiculous. Because you're as much alive with 1 pool as you are with 30 pool. But if you can faster make these pools pool into vampires, and those vampires can do actions towards your strategy of getting a game win, you will have a better position than the other players around the table. Having pool just for the sake of having pool is not great. It's a bit of a defense, but it's not great. It's better to have vampires that do cool actions or block cool actions. Oh, this didn't turn out as I thought it would. Okay, not all disciplines are equal. This might be stating the obvious, but it's good to recognize that not all disciplines are equal. There are disciplines that are bad, I'd say, and there are disciplines that are okay.
Which one is bad? Weird.
Put me against the wall. Let me get back to that. And maybe not bad, because all disciplines have some parts that are playable. But some disciplines have more playable cards and cards that are easier used to fulfill a certain strategy. Like as I see it, these are the 4 main disciplines: the throughput disciplines, the combat disciplines, support disciplines, and blocking/defensive disciplines. And I've illustrated these by the 4 most obvious ones. By throughput,
Presence. Yeah, it should be included.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Presence is a throughput discipline, I'd say. But just say using these words to help you analyze a discipline. Throughput is getting pool damage in your prey. that is for me throughput. There are some defensive capabilities in Dominate, yes. There are some other cards that do more corner case things. There's also cards like Seduction, that's more like a support card, helps you get action through. But overall, the main strength of Dominate, in my opinion, is throughput. You put, with this ease, much damage in the prey. The combat disciplines are mainly used for combat. I illustrated this by potence. Animalism is arguably a better choice. I wouldn't know, I'd say animalism is a better choice, but animalism also have some defensive capabilities. So most disciplines fall under several categories, but also depending on how you build your deck, a certain discipline can end up being a throughput discipline or a defensive discipline. And Dominate being the most obvious choice. If you pack Dominate only to use deflection, then Dominate isn't really a throughput discipline. Then Dominate is a defensive discipline. And maybe you use Present for throughput, or maybe you use Dragonbound for throughput, or maybe you use Tank for throughput. I don't know. But the main thing is what you use to main deck. And since by support, that is basically disciplines that helps out the other disciplines, either by stealthing, that's most obvious one, or block line, but also by actions that doesn't directly go towards the goal. For instance, Mind Rape Superior, or maybe sensory deprivation, or something like that. It doesn't directly go towards a certain ousting strategy, but having one of your predator's minion not being able to untap is kind of strong. So, and if not all disciplines are equal, as they're not, in my opinion, and they have different roles to play in a deck. There are clans that are bad, and there are clans that are better. Because, like McCaven 94 is Dominate, obfuscate wall specs. That is very easy. You have wall specs to defend, maybe let's Dominate, you have Dominate for throughput, and you have stealth to get discipline through. And you take a clan like Nosferatu, that have potent animalism and obfuscate. And these doesn't combine in the same obvious way. So, depending on what disciplines the clan has, it ends up being a stronger or worse deck. Let me see my notes. And by defensive and blocking, I mean reactive decks, or reactive disciplines. Not defensive in the way as a rush is, because it's proactive, or a superior mind rate, it's proactive. A sensory deprivation, it's proactive. Okay. Let's go. This is the main uses of masters. This is, if any one of you have read OVA, and I can't pronounce his last name, blog is one of the best blogs, I think, about Leaders, or at least strategy-wise. He said at one point that he doesn't like masters, and that's the only point where I don't agree with the man. He's a genius, very, very good player, and very good tech builder, etc., etc. But for me, masters is the key. It's the master key. It's the lock in the chest. For me, masters is a problem solver. You build a deck with your disciplines, and you use your vampires for a certain strategy. Blocking, voting, combat, or combination of them. And you can end up with problems. Have you ever bled with low to mid-cap or observation and dominate guys? In turn 4 or 5, you're out of blood. So, how could you solve this problem? You could trash the deck, or you could put some pooled blood in. There are many ways of getting blood with monsters. You have the Coven, you have Blood Doll, you have Vestal, you have Giant's Blood, you have Lilith's Blessing, you have Life in the City. So they solve a problem for the deck that you can't solve yourself. You also have, for instance, the Path, also reduce the blood cost, therefore increasing the number of blood counters on your vampires. You have pool game, and by pool game I mean cards that either move blood from your vampires to your pool, or more cards that directly hit your pool. So there we have Blood Doll, Vessel, Villain, I don't count minion tap, I hope you don't either. You have Asher Tablet, Liquidation, Ascendance, a few other cards. That gave you pool. So having pool game could be a way of getting more vampires into play, for instance, if that's a problem with your deck. Then you want pool, you can use them to put more vampires in play. Or you can use the pool to defend yourself, like having very much pools to be able to play fewer delaying tactics or bounces. Another thing is, if you're facing a wall, or a superstar wall, even worse, you have the European Stealth. That is primarily Tactics Aversion, Troublemaker, and Misdirection. So you use them to tap your prey down, or you use Pentix to make them unable to block. Pentix is primarily for solving blocking problems, and the tapping is mainly used to deny bounces. And what do I mean by that? That if all guys of your prey are tapped, they need one bounce and one wake for each bounce. If they are superior dominate guys standing untapped, then that is the same amount of bounces as they have blood. So you can wiggle that with the European stuff. You have Crypt Acceleration, I've already managed that. Crypt Accelerations are freak drives that allows you to bleed. You also have the Asher Tablet and Liquidation, and these are very, very popular. At least if you check the eBay prices and the tournament winning deck archive. I know there are a lot of people that have issues with the cards and think of them as boring. Me myself, I've had a love for this since the release of Keeps the Vision, so that's 3 years almost. I will go in more detail for this later on when we do the case study. You have card cancellation. These are basically either denying your other fellows blood gain or similar, or pool gain, or denying them the third Asher Tablets, etc. And you have direct intervention, which in my opinion is mostly a defensive card. That is, you use it to survive. Either make the grapple fail, or Karen Krause fail, or maybe a bounce from your predator, or a conditioning, or something like that. But you can also use them aggressively, like denying your prey a VP by DIing their conditioning, for instance, or bouncing to your prey and make him bounce to his prey and then DI his bounce, and therefore getting exposure damage on the prey. And the last thing is unclogging a hand jam. And in my opinion, there's only really one viable option, and that is Dreams of the Sphinx. Some people argue that the Baron is a good card. I think it's okay. It's okay card. But since, for me at least, the only option is going Dreams of the Sphinx, you end up with a contest issue. So you contest Dreams of the Sphinx most of the game. You might, in total of a game, maybe be able to use 2 or 3 counters out of the dream, and maybe 1 or 2 of those were in your uncontrolled region. So then it's really not that helpful with unclogging your hand. But if you end up in a situation where you are the sole master of Dreams of the Sphinx, it works wonders for your hand. It really does. It's the difference between a game win and not, especially if you're playing a deck that is more toolbox fit, or implement several strategies, because then you have a bigger risk of making a hand jam. So, getting close to the end. Case study. Girls will find. I don't know if you've ever been to the tournament winning deck archive and searched for Girls Will Find without the dots. And if you go furthest down, that is the oldest deck. It was played by a Finnish guy, and his name is more or less Teemu Saijonmaa or something like that. And that original deck has been evolved and changed into something else. And then there is, at least in my opinion, 3 different versions, an air quote, of that deck. So there you have the Girls Will Find 8, that's combat deck, and you have the group, the Geezers Will Find, and that is the group 2 deck with Putti, Arika, Etios, and a couple of suspects. Usual suspects, sorry. In Sweden, we have a long tradition of playing master decks. It dates back to like 2002 or something like that, with a man called Sten Dyring playing, and I don't know if he was the only guy in the world or if he invented the archetype or whatever, but I know that he played it and made some wins with it. Like the Anson deck, where you played Anarch Revolt, like the old version of the Anarch Revolts. So, for more or less 10 years, Masters have been in the Vitus community, and since the Vitus community, especially the Swedish one, is very small, and everybody knows everybody, more or less, at least the ones playing tournament, so that knowledge might have been passed on to young Padawans like myself. And looking at different decks that have had success or have been built in Sweden, maybe not for the first time, you never know, but at least built and have success in Sweden. You have Girls Will Find Blind Spots, Girl Will Find 8, Geese Will Find the Blind Spot, Isambayan, the Kaiser with Masters, certainly, Jolana Vuku with Animalism. And there are also some other concepts that have been borrowed from abroad, like Folke Hansson with guns and Martin Baltas, Speed Chambers from the Swiss Academy, Council of Doom from the Swiss Academy. And Council of Doom and Jesus Will Find Your Blindfold should not be confused with each other. The Morris Strex makes a difference. This is Girls Will Find in a piece from the EFC by Korsnason once again. And this is the deck list. I think you're fairly familiar with it, but it's a deck that more than 50% of it have masters, and the rest is stealth bleed and some defensive parts. Like Four Majesties and the Lost of Legislation and the weights. Here is the genius of Teemu Saijonmaa. Who would have thought that Sibel and Axinia Daclau is friends? Or even best buddies, even married. They have so much synergy that when you see it, and you can't unsee it. And just to make the basics of it, she obviously bounces with Mastercards, and Sibel allows you to play an additional Mastercard. So that means that you play 2 Mastercards each turn, and depending on how many times you bounce, you essentially discard your leftover villains, your leftover liquidation, your leftover Silas Valley to bounce. So, Sibel makes you play the good masters, Axinia lets you discard the bad masters to bounce, and then you use an additional discard, your ordinary discard phase action, to discard another one of your bad masters. So you might end up removing between 3 and maybe up to 6 masters a turn. So the 48 masters doesn't seem that big at this point. And they have other obvious things in common. The animalism is not that important in the Girls Will Find deck. You have the guard and the rest warning, and they're very, very, very good. But it's not important in this particular deck. But it's the presence, and it's the thaumaturgy. So you can use Perfect Paragon, Cloak the Gathering, and Mirror Walk to make stealth and make Xenia actually be a power dealer. And this is very important to make Xenia not like a really, really expensive bouncing girl. Like she actually can participate and do stuff. And then the third is the addition by Erik Torstensson and with some help from the Swedish community, adding the 4 inner circles of the Keeper's Edition. In the original version there were 4 copies of either Beatrice, the imbued, or 4 copies of Nurgle. But obviously the inner circles work better. They have votes, they're not, you get a bit better crypt draw because they're 4 different and not 4 of the same. And they all have obfuscate and 3 out of 4 have presence. So you use them for power leading. This is Asher Tablets and Liquidations. And how do you use them? Depending on how you make your deck, you use them in different ways. But essentially you use them to rebuild your library to what the situation needs. So depending, in this case, depending if your prey have a lot of pool, or if your prey have block and you need obfuscate, you decide to shuffle with Asher Tablets those cards into your library. And the liquidation is used to mill yourself. And just doing this card combo is very, very strong. But in the end, you end up gaining a lot of pool. So you decide what you want in your library depending on what you're about to oust. You can even put your extra majesties, unleash Hell Fury, etc. into your deck to make even better defense. So that's the strength of it. You mill yourself, remove those 48 monster cards, there are very, very few. You shuffle 30 cards into your library, you make 3 actions. Those 3 actions is maybe 15 pool damage, and that's most of the time 2 praise. And then you do that, rinse and repeat until you successfully take the game win. And this is the last and final point of girl-defined your blind points. The bloating is not for defense. You have enough defense. Most of the time, by defense I mean from pool damage, most of the time you have enough to survive by Lost Translation and Xenia's special cortex. The bloating is for having the pool to spend it on Silas Valley to get more inner circles into play, so those inner circles can end up doing more pool damage to your prey. Because how Villain works is that you put a level cap into play, there's one turn where you're very fragile, because you just invested 11 pool in a vampire, then you play a Villain, you gain between 6 and 8 pool back, and it only costs like 3 or 4 pool that inner circle guy, and you're safe. And you continue to do this and raise your pool so you have high enough pool to actually risk. You can afford to risk to bring another 11 cap into play. So you might end up in the end of a game with something like 50 pool worth of vampires, and that's kind of ridiculous. You could use the bloat for defensive purposes, but that probably means that you're in a very bad spot. And that's all I have to say about it. Anyone have any questions?